BusinessNet Explorer, product news podcast channel. This is B&E Product News, supporting specifiers and buyers. This podcast is sponsored by the B&E Product News podcast library. Well, hi, this is Mick de Leyburn for BusinessNet Explorer. In this edition of the B&E Brand Leader interview podcast for our Building World series, we discuss humidity in the heritage sector. So places like museums, art galleries and stately homes. Now, Dave Marshall-George, UK Sales Director at Humidity Control Specialist Condair, joins us on the phone to help us to understand a bit more about what role humidity plays in preserving our nation's history. So hi Dave.
Hi Mick.
Well, I don't know about you, but I love a leisurely peruse around a place like the Natural History Museum or checking out the latest oddity in the Tate Modern. But I can't say I've ever really considered the humidity whilst doing so. So tell me, Dave, why is humidity important in these places?
Yeah, I know what you mean, Mick. Museums are amazing places, but there's much more to managing these places than just putting exhibits on display and keeping them safe from the likes of you and I wandering through. Keeping them safe can also mean preserving them through time. And to do that, museums need to control all variables that might damage an exhibit.
And humidity is one of those variables?
Yeah, all materials have an internal moisture content, particularly natural materials. And this internal water held inside materials like wood, ivory or canvas can move. And depending on how dry or humid the air is, moisture can move from the object to the air and from the air to the object. Now, this movement's only slight, but even tiny changes in internal moisture levels over time can cause severe degradation of exhibits, particularly at the surface.
So what sort of damage are we talking about?
Well, do you know, it reminds me of an example that I came across a number of years ago in a museum in the Midlands, where they'd got a 16th century oil painting that was oil painted on board. And this thing had expanded so much and contracted with so much with a change in moisture content that it had cracked from top to bottom, and the crack was almost enough to put a coin in. It can cause priceless amounts of damage.
Okay, so given the impact on things like paintings and exhibits, what humidity level should these buildings have?
It's a tricky question to answer. Ideally, to prevent moisture change in an object, the air needs to be kept in equilibrium to the material in question. But as these buildings contain loads of different materials, all with varying levels of susceptibility to humidity, setting one ideal level is difficult. Over the years, different organisations have published varying recommendations on what an ideal museum humidity is, and generally the range of 40 to 60% RH is accepted as the ideal. This meets the needs of a wide range of materials and is achievable from a building management perspective. But in addition to this range of humidity, the guideline is also that humidity fluctuation is kept to a minimum.
Fluctuation meaning a change in humidity. So how much change is okay?
Exactly. So the recommendations is that humidity shouldn't rise or fall more than 10% RH in any 24-hour period. So as well as not going below 40% or above 60%, humidity shouldn't change more than 10% in any 24 hours.
And why is that?
Well, that's because materials will naturally adjust to changes in the air. But if the materials have less time to adjust, cracks at the surface are much more likely. So if the air changes slowly, there's less stress on the objects, as they may have longer to climatise. So damage is then minimised.
Okay, so how easy is that for a museum to do, to prevent rapid changes?
It's achievable, but it can be a challenge. These buildings can be empty 1 minute and full of tourists in from the rain the next. So any humidity control system must be capable of rapid reaction to a control signal for either removing or adding moisture to the air. And for those objects that are particularly sensitive to moisture, display cases are often used. It's easy to control the humidity in a small case than in a whole room. And it's cheaper and uses less energy, of course.
Energy use, yes, seems to be a central concern for everyone nowadays. And this is also true for museums then?
Yes, Mick, it's a huge concern. So much so that in the last few years, the general guidelines for humidity control have been developed with a more sustainable approach in mind. A protocol that promotes a greener practice first mindset now encourages museum managers to use humidity set points that are more tailored to the needs of a collection. The 40 to 60 plus minus 10 guideline is still generally held to, but if the materials in question don't need such a tight control, facility managers can allow a wider range if it reduces energy use.
So museums are doing their bit to help protect our future as well as our past.
Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it.
And is there anything else a museum can do to save energy on humidity control?
Yeah, we often see seasonal variations in temperature set points being used to save energy. This is called seasonal optimization. A cooler indoor temperature in the winter still feels comfortable to occupants, as it's still much warmer than outside and people tend to wear warmer clothes. Dropping from a summer indoor temperature of let's say 23 to 18 degrees C for the winter means the indoor relative humidity is naturally higher. But a colder temperature has a higher relative humidity, so this reduces the need for humidification in the winter.
And saves money on heating as well, I imagine.
Exactly, and vice versa in the summer. Allowing indoors to get a little bit warmer drops the aircon bills and potentially the need for dehumidification.
OK, so apart from managing humidity by changing the temperature, what sort of systems are at work to keep the air around our museums in that sweet spot of 40 to 60 you mentioned?
Well, that's going to be a combination of humidification, which is adding water to the air, and dehumidification, which is taking it away. Now, depending on the type of building in question, these systems will be at work either in a central air treatment system, somewhere in a plant room, or they could be operating directly in a gallery. Larger modern buildings will typically have ductwork and air treatment systems, whereas older buildings or smaller buildings often won't. Now, when we're humidifying a central air handling unit in a heritage building, steam humidifiers are a popular solution. Now, they boil water to release steam into the air and can provide a rapid response to a control signal. Now, this allows accurate control of humidity and helps us to avoid those fluctuations in humidity that we talked about.
I see. And can those be used in room also for the smaller or older buildings without ducting?
Well, they can, but typically we wouldn't put these types of systems directly in a public space. They have high voltage internal components and high temperatures, so this needs to be considered when locating them. Also, museums and galleries are beautiful places, and often clients want the HVAC systems to be concealed or, at the very least, really discreet.
So what type of systems are used in-room?
Well, generally, mobile humidifiers are popular in heritage environments. These can provide enough humidity for an average-sized single room and are quite discreet in their design. And they can also be put away when not needed. During the summer, indoor air may not need any moisture adding, so mobile humidifiers can simply be tidied away.
And what about dehumidification?
Well, for dehumidifiers, there's two main types. There's desiccant and condensing. Both can be used in room or in duct, but the main one we tend to use in this sector is condensing. It's efficient at a regular 20 degrees C room temperature and can easily deliver the 50% condition normally needed. However, if there are very close control applications with extreme conditions or low temperatures, there can be times when desiccant models present a better option. Whenever making a decision on technologies, it's always best to consult an expert, and our sales engineers are always happy to visit sites and walk customers through their options for both humidification and dehumidification.
I bet even more so when the customer is a place of interest.
Yeah, it's definitely a perk of the job. Getting to explore the inner workings of some fascinating buildings like the Tate or La Louvre.
Really? La Louvre, Paris?
Oh yeah. Condair works in heritage sites across the world, from the Smithsonian and the Guggenheim in the US to the Rijksmuseum in the Netherlands or the V&A in London. We've actually got well over 100 reference sites in this sector on our website, condair.co.uk. That's also a great resource for anyone looking for further info on the topic. There's articles and webinars on both humidification and dehumidification, as well as a really useful 10-point guide to humidity control in heritage buildings.
Okay, well, thank you, Dave. As always on these B&E Brand Leader bite-sized learning podcasts, you've taken a key humidity-related subject and shared your industry knowledge and expertise to give us a real understanding of the issues and show us how to overcome them smoothly with specialist support.
Thanks, mate.
To find out more about controlling humidity in museums and galleries, or to get in touch with the team at Condair, go to www.condair.co.uk. And to hear more B&E bite-sized learning podcasts exploring other humidity-related subjects with Dave Marshall-George, UK Sales Director at Humidity Control Specialist Condair, just head for the B&E Podcast Library, or you can check them out on Condair's podcast webpage. Well, thank you for joining us for this latest edition of the B&E Product News Podcast. And please, stay safe. Follow us on Twitter at B&E Product News to keep updated on our latest product news podcast releases, and visit us at businessnetexplorer.com to find more product news and information for specifiers and buyers in the construction and building services and associated manufacturing and energy sectors. BusinessNet Explorer podcasts are now available via the Apple Podcasts app, iTunes and on Spotify. You can subscribe to access our existing content and, of course, to receive every new podcast that we publish in audio format.